Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
All right, hockey fans, welcome back to Union Junction. It is Thursday, January the 20th, and this week's show is being brought to you by The Morning Skate, a daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday through Friday, jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It's a daily dose of the latest NHL news, rumors, history, funnies, quizzes, and so on. So it's just a little hockey fun and information brought to you every day of the week from the hockey writers, and during the show, you will see a link in the description, so make sure you sign up for that. Figure this week we're going to start off. We have a special guest joining us with the Penguins finally playing the Blue Jackets for the first time in what seems like forever. One of the better, actually, I'm going to say one of the best Penguins followers you can have out there is joining us, and it's Taylor Haase from DKonPittsburgh Sports. How you doing, Taylor?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate the time here, and just get caught up on the Penguins. They just got off a road trip from the West. Signature win, 5-3 in Vegas. 6-2 in their last 8. It just seems like that they're back to business as usual, just winning games in a good playoff position. Just what's clicking for them in your sight?
There's very few things that aren't clicking. I mean, they went on that 10-game win streak. It comes to an end on that trip. Really, the only bad game they played on that trip was the one in LA, but such a good game against San Jose. And then, the one in Vegas was the one that was really encouraging just because we haven't seen many games from them this season where they go down early and then still manage to come back and win. And that's what they did. I mean, they were down, 3-0 to Vegas after the first, and then they do come back, win 5-3. That was only their fourth win of the season when they don't score first. So just really encouraging to see that kind of response from them. Yep. Honestly, the only hole you could really point to during that 10-game win streak they had was the backup goalie, Casey DeSmith, and then he goes on COVID protocol. Louis Domingue comes up from Wilkes-Barre, plays that game in San Jose, and was just, fantastic, 40 saves. So there's really not much you can complain about with this team right now.
No, especially with a superstar recently coming back in Evgeni Malkin and just jumping right into it with him. How is he look coming back after obviously a very long layoff?
Yeah, I mean, those he had 2 goals in his first game back. So just I think we expected him to come back ready, just because the Penguins were very cautious with when they were going to bring him back. It feels like he was skating forever, then skating with contact forever before he got back into a game. So we knew he was ready. He said his knee was 200% better. So he hasn't scored since that first game. Still some turnovers, giveaway issues. Hasn't been great on the faceoffs. In that first game he played, he had Jeff Carter on his wing, and Jeff Carter took the faceoffs for him. So that's kind of an area of his game that he's still, working on getting back up to normal. But otherwise, I mean, it's just such a deep Penguins team. Now that, I mean, they're just at fully healthy. They have their last guys come out of COVID protocol on Wednesday. Might not play Thursday yet. Might see him Friday in Columbus. But yeah, just such a deep team right now, the deepest we've seen in a while.
Yeah, and especially given the performance of the goaltending. I know that you mentioned Domingue had the win, but the whole season, there's a lot of questions coming in about how Tristan Jarry would respond, and he's been nothing short of spectacular. Is there anything that you've seen in him that kind of explains why he's been so good, and perhaps is this something that he can come up with, keep up when the playoffs come around?
I just think for him, it's a mental thing for him. The Penguins did, fire goaltending coach Mike Buckley, brought up Andy Chiodo in the offseason. And, I can't really speak to, Mike Buckley and how he was with the mental game, but from the beginning when they bring up Andy Chiodo, Hextall, everyone that has dealt with Chiodo is praising Chiodo and how he is with the mental side of the game for goaltenders. And when we've asked Jarry, I feel like we've asked him a couple of times this season, just what has led to the success we're seeing from him this season. he talks about, just the way Kyoto has them prepared mentally, and if things aren't going well, like, going down 3-0 in Vegas, he's not going to he's going to be able to respond well. He's not going to fall apart just because of a bad start. So I think really from him, it's just a mental thing, not necessarily anything technical.
Another player that I think is very interesting that Blue Jackets fans especially are going to want to hear about, I know maybe his role is a little bit diminished now that everybody's healthy, but the role that Evan Rodrigues was on, especially at the beginning of the year, just awesome. Did anybody see this coming at all?
No, I mean, he looked good. He's really looked fine. I mean, since the Penguins acquired him from the Sabres, he really didn't get much of a chance in Buffalo. He did have a smaller role there. He was, a healthy scratch in Buffalo. And then he comes here, and I mean, we ask him, just all the time. Like, I feel like, again, he's another one we've asked all the time, like, what is happening this season? And he just talks about confidence. He does seem to have worked on his shot in the off season. I mean, he has like a one-timer on the power play that, like, it looks like Ovechkin sometimes when he's shooting from the left circle. So yeah, I mean, just career numbers from him already. Again, not something I think they really necessarily expected from him. But yeah, I think we expected him to take a step forward. But yeah, I mean, he was their first line center for a couple games when they had, injuries, COVID issues, and he handled it well. So yeah, they've used him all up and down the lineup. As Wednesday's practice, he was on the third line. We'll see what happens when Heinen and Aston Reese do get back in. And, if they move guys around, you might want to try him on the second line in Kapanen's place, because Kapanen hasn't really. He's kind of in a funk. But yeah, Rodrigues, he's someone they can use up and down, and he's just solid. I know some fans are complaining that he got taken off the top power play, when they got healthy. He's not on the second power play. I know some people argue, like, Rush should be on the second one and move Rodrigues up because he was that good and he was just shooting the puck so much, and that's why we're seeing these goals from him.
If that's the most that fans are complaining right now, things are going pretty well in Penguins land, right?
Yeah, I mean, just really the backup goalie is the biggest issue, and now with Deming stepping up at it, we might see competition in a battle, but yeah, not a whole lot to complain about.
Absolutely not. Taylor Haase joining us from DKonPittsburgh Sports, and at the end here in a few minutes, we'll ask about how that is going along, because they have a wonderful team. You got her, they have the Hall of Famer Dave Molinari, they have Tom Reed, and of course Dan himself covering this team top to bottom, one of the best that you've got out there. So I think for the Blue Jackets, they look at the Penguins and they think, oh, the window has to be closing and everyone's aging, but yet it just continues to be business as usual. It just feels like as long as Crosby and Malkin are on this team, their window is open. Do you get any sense that they're slowing down at all? I mean, is this window actually closing at all, or is there still legitimately a couple seasons left where they could really contend for the cup?
Yeah, I mean, I still think the window's open. I know, well, you look into last season, I think a lot of people thought that this team would miss the playoffs and then they win the division. And then coming into this season, I think a lot of people kind of had the same expectation. And you look at where they are in the standings. I don't think the playoff streak is going to come to an end. So yeah, with Crosby, Malkin getting back, I mean, again, we haven't seen this team healthy yet all season. Probably going to see it for the first time this week, and something the players have been saying, I think it was Gensel that said, like, we haven't even seen what this team could be, and this is in the midst of the 10-game winning streak. So yeah, I just the backup goaltending, again, really the only concern, because Jarry can't play 60-something games this season. You don't want him to wear out by the playoffs. And this really, I mean, it was a strong team going into last year's playoff against the Islanders. Jarry kind of fell apart at the end there, the bad turnover that, kind of ended up costing them the series. Malkin wasn't 100%. Malkin was dealing with his knee injury in that series. So guys are banged up. But, I mean, right now, this team healthy, yeah, I would say the window is absolutely still open.
Taylor, one thing that I certainly respect, and I think a lot of fans certainly respect the job you do, is you do a really good job covering AHL Wilkes-Barre. Almost as much as you tweet about the regular Penguins, you're tweeting about the baby Penguins. And can you just give fans a sense of how deep their prospect pool actually is? Because I see a lot of people say, oh, the Penguins don't have much in their system. And for somebody like you who covers the team really, really close, what is the truth there?
I mean, that is the truth. The prospect pool is very shallow. I wouldn't say the worst in the league, but it is definitely towards the bottom. They do have some exciting prospects. Honestly, the two that I'm most excited about are two goalies who are in Europe. But I mean, the guys in Wilkes-Barre, not a lot of high-end talent down there. A lot of guys that are, borderline NHL could step up. We've seen guys come up like Casper Bjorkquist, guys that have been down there like Anthony Angelo come up. Not a lot of high-end talent. Really, their biggest high-end guys down there are Sam Poulin and Nathan Legray, two forwards who were just healthy scratched down in Wilkes-Barre 2 weeks ago. Since then, the way they responded so they were scratched was more about bad decisions with the puck, not being very responsible, turnovers, stuff like that. And the way they responded in the game since then is most encouraging they've looked to me all year. Otherwise, they've been pretty underwhelming. But yeah, I mean, Wilkes-Barre, they were last in the AHL for a little bit. They've moved up in the standings a little bit. It seems maybe they've turned the corner. They've been hit really hard with COVID injuries. They had a really good goalie prospect come in, Philip Lindbergh. He's been out since November. Doesn't seem to come back anytime soon. So I don't think Wilkes-Barre's the prospect pool is pretty shallow. I don't think Wilkes-Barre's record is necessarily a good indication of how they've played. They've had a lot of close games that they really should have won. But I mean, yeah, the pool is shallow.
Yeah, and it's something maybe in a few years they'll have to address that. But right now, the regular team's doing so well. That's obviously the main focus. But Taylor, I want to give you a chance to kind of pump up the site that you work for, and they cover all of Pittsburgh sports great, but especially the Penguins. Just how has that whole thing been going along? And just talk about the team that I mentioned with Molinari and Tom Reed and yourself, and just the way that you guys cover the Penguins.
Yeah, so DKonPittsburgh Sports. We cover Penguins, Pirates, Steelers, Pitt, Penn State, a little bit of Robert Morris. But our Penguins, our Penguins beat. It's myself and Dave Molinari, who Hockey Hall of Fame for writing.
Yep.
We've been kind of splitting, the travel and the games 50-50 on the beat, and then Dan is a columnist, so he helps out too, and then Tom Reed, like you said, he's our in-depth writer, so he has in-depth feature every week. He kind of rotates on what team it's about, but I mean, he's had stuff on Brock McGinn, Teddy Bluger, a couple of individual Penguins, stuff like Mike Sullivan. So I think we have a good balance, and I like to mix in analytics, and then obviously I go real hard on the prospects. And then we'd also have Danny Shirey recently joined, who does our analytics, a lot of video breakdowns. He's actually based in Columbus, moving to Pittsburgh soon, but so I think we really go at it from all angles.
Really good job there. Fans, make sure you follow Taylor out on Twitter. She's out there constantly tweeting. It's at Taylor Haase PGH. Really appreciate you taking the time here to get us caught up on all things Penguins. It's Blue Jackets, Penguins at Nationwide Arena on Friday night. So Taylor, thank you very much for the time. We very much appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Fans, stay tuned. Part 2. Nick's going to join us. We're going to figure out what the heck happened this past week with that 9-2 game of the Panthers. So stay tuned. All right, fans, welcome back to part 2 of Union Junction on Thursday, January the 20th. Mark and now Nick is here. We had Taylor Haase from DKonPittsburgh Sports who joined us and talked all about the Pittsburgh Penguins and back to their business as usual of winning. So that game on Friday will certainly be interesting. But Nick, have you signed up for the Hockey Writers morning skate yet?
Mark Scheig, are you off your rocker? The Hockey Writers morning skate? What are you talking about? No, I haven't.
Oh, dude, listen. Don't forget to sign up for the morning skate. It's morningskate.io, so you don't miss. That's the best daily hockey newsletter on the planet. delivered every weekday at 8 a.m. sharp. Be the first to know what's happening in the world of hockey. So I expect you to do that. And if you do it, I promise I will do it too.
All right, I'm logging on right now. We'll take care of this.
All right, we will definitely take care of this after we record.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks, Mark.
Absolutely. But back to the business at hand here, though, Nick, we have a lot to talk about with the Blue Jackets. I mean, going back to last week, we said, how are they going to win any games? So what they do Thursday, they go out and they win 6-0 at PNC Arena against the Carolina Hurricanes, only to come back Saturday with probably their most embarrassing game that I've seen in years, losing 9-2 to the Florida Panthers. Where do we even begin with this? What kind of sense does that little stretch make, and what takeaways do you have, Nick?
Well, I mean, if you look at the average of those two games, it wasn't that bad, right? The absolute worst, the absolute best, it's right down the middle, right?
Right.
It's just been a pendulum this season for the Blue Jackets, and you see it swaying a little bit. And now it's just, it's crazy. This week, I don't think any of us could have predicted what we saw to happen. I mean, I hate to say it, but we could have expected a loss that was pretty big against the Panthers, but after that win against Carolina, I was expecting quite a different performance. What about you?
Yeah, the confidence certainly was there. You knew that the Panthers were going to be a huge challenge, but the Blue Jackets were looking for a measuring stick, an opportunity to see how are they going to do against the best teams in the league. And you thought if they can beat Carolina in their pressure, they should at least be able to compete with Florida. But Florida was able to do whatever it wanted. And to even take a step further with the Panthers, the night before, they won 7-1 against the Dallas Stars. So they were, in theory, a tired team. They spent 60 minutes doing whatever they wanted. And it was just absolutely insane to watch how different Thursday and Saturday night was. But it definitely brings a couple things to the forefront when seeing 9-2 like that. You want to see how players react in the face of adversity like that. You're down 6-0. You're basically down 6-0 after the second period. Who's going to give in? Who's going to perform? Who's going to continue to give their effort? Because Brad Larson, after that game, said he saw some guys giving in, and it was to him very discouraging to see that. He wouldn't, of course, name any names, but I think it's pretty obvious who continued with the effort level. Boone Jenner, of course, Gus Nyquist, they each scored a goal. Those are your leaders. You expect them to continue to compete. Kudos for them for doing that. But man, I'll tell you what, there are some, I understand this is a young team, but there are some veterans that are on this team right now that are vastly, vastly underperforming. And to put the microscope on that 9-2 game just showed how embarrassing it was. I know they've moved on from it. They're looking forward to Philadelphia here, but that's a really tough pill to swallow. I don't care if it's a rebuilding year or not. At the end of the day, that's just an embarrassing performance. I mean, they have to look past it. I mean, we'll see where it goes from here. Some of these players could have a lot that they have to really, they got to move forward from it, and they got to start to perform. As eyes of management are watching them. Their futures could be in play here. They could be playing for future jobs. So,
and unfortunately, we are kind of bound by a recency bias here. In sports, it's what have you done for me lately?
Yep.
You also can't forget, though, that they did play incredibly well against Carolina.
Sure.
So there's a lot of bad takeaways from this week, from that 9-2 game, but you also can't forget the other 50% of the games they played this week and how well they played against the Hurricanes, shutting out the top team in their division and one of the top teams in the league after they had, put up a stinker against them to open the new year. So,
yeah,
it's
that's
not
a
all
great
bad.
point. No, it's not. And if you want to look at it in a vacuum like that, that could be a glimpse of what a successful future looks like when you see Igor Chinakhov scoring 2 goals. You see Cole Cylinder scoring goals. You see Emil Bemstrom scoring an important goal to open the scoring. Elvis Merzlikins shutting out a top team in the league in their home building. So that's you're right. It's the frustration of a roller coaster ride, knowing that that's what you're going to get. Like you're going to get 6 games where everything's going to go perfectly, and that's what 6-0 is going to look like. And then you're going to have 6 games in the year where it's going to look like 9-2, where no matter what you did, nothing worked. But it's what you do with the other 70 games that are going to dictate how your season is going to go. So you can't put the entire stock of the season in just those 2 games, but it does show very clearly the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And it's just a matter of now, can they find the consistency, and then can they learn from both games, to try to find that consistency.
Yes, it's definitely a wild one.
Absolutely. So, Nick, the next thing I want to ask you about here is just now looking forward to, the week to come here. They could kind of a stretch of home games here, except in Philadelphia, they're tonight, Thursday night. Then they play the next night in a back-to-back against the Penguins. The Penguins also have to play in a back-to-back. And then they have a pretty winnable game, you would think, Sunday night at home against the Ottawa Senators. What things are you going to be looking for in this next set of games?
I think we kind of touched on it earlier, is the bounce back factor. It's going to be a big question who they put in goal, because both of the goalies got shelled in the last game. That's going to be something I'm going to be looking at, is to see who they put in and how they react to, kind of just trying to get back underway. And then we're going to see if there really is that much of a difference between how well they play at home and on the road. Because we had a bit of a stretch on the road there, both games last week on the road, another game on the road against Philadelphia. And then, like you mentioned, the homestand. And this is a team that has been above average at home throughout this whole season. So the fans at Nationwide Arena will be there. They'll be excited to see them back again after a week and a bit off. It's definitely going to be interesting to see. What do you think?
I am going to be looking at the veterans, and I'm not speaking of like Jenner or Nyquist. I'm looking to guys like a Max Domi, like a Jack Roslovic. These are guys that they're experienced enough. They might not be perceived as part of the leadership core, but they're important to the success of the team. And I want to see guys like that. Hasn't been a great ride for them recently at all. But you mentioned the response. I want to see the specific response from them. Now, how are they going to get out of this funk? As we recall, Roslovic had a great offensive year last year. His minutes are way down, and it's now the trade rumors are kind of starting to percolate around him. That Domi is somebody that might be gone by the trade deadline as well. So these are guys that have a lot on the line here in terms of what their next contract might look like, and in fact, where their next team might even be. So those are, we're starting to get toward that countdown of, the grind of January, February, the trade deadlines in March this year. The guys that are struggling, show me what you got now. That's what I'm going to be looking for, especially in this next little bit of stretch.
And one guy in particular that you haven't mentioned, but that the Blue Jackets really should be looking to, is Oliver Bjorkstrand. He was their top scorer out of the whole first few months of the season, and now he's kind of gotten cold. He's only had 3 points since December the 11th. That's something that we're going to have to look forward to moving forward.
Yeah, he you're right. He's one that definitely has to find his way. He's one of the leaders, so he's got to let his play do the talking. So that said, we've got the Flyers coming up here, and I know that Jacob Voracek is officially questionable. Brad Larson said on Wednesday that he did not think that he'd have him because he'd still be in COVID protocol. But if you remember what happened to Alex Texier, he ended up traveling separately down, and he was able to play against Carolina because he was able to test out of protocol. But on the other side of that, the Blue Jackets are going to see one Cam Atkinson for the first time on the other side wearing a different uniform. How awkward is that going to be, and just how much juice do you think that will give this particular game, especially if Voracek can play up against Atkinson?
Well, Atkinson is one of the more beloved players in the last, in the history of the Blue Jackets, that when you look at it. I would imagine that he's going to be pretty fired up because of how kind of surprising that trade was, because he was doing promos with the Blue Jackets the day before talking about next year and all that kind of stuff. So he was kind of taken off guard. I'm sure that he's, a little upset by it. It was his home. He was always one of the guys who said he wanted to be in Columbus. So definitely a tough guy to see leave, but that's going to have some juice. It's kind of similar to the Blackhawks game earlier on. If Seth Jones would have been in the lineup for that, there was a lot of anticipation headed up to that one. Very similar, and one of those key guys from the last core of this team who is going to be against the Blue Jackets again. It's going to be weird. It's going to really be weird. I always thought he'd be a career guy in Columbus, but what do you think, Mark, heading into this game?
Yeah, I mean, I never saw this coming. I don't think a lot of people saw it coming, but the Blue Jackets reached a point where they weren't getting the success that they were looking for, and they saw an opportunity to get a bigger body guy and a playmaker and someone that had 1 year less remaining on their contract, and the money ended up being about the same. So in their mind, it felt like that it improved their team. And when Voracek has been in there, I mean, the playmaking has been obvious. So it's helped the Blue Jackets in that respect. But on the other side, yeah, it is going to be so weird to see Atkinson. And I even tweeted about this the other day. If you had told me last year that Flyers fans would be pushing for Cam Atkinson to get into the All-Star game and Blue Jackets fans would be pushing Voracek to get into the All-Star game, that I would have clearly thought that you were drunk. But yet that's where we were at. Just how weird that whole trade ended up being. And I could just imagine what Atkinson's feeling. He wants to kick the crap out of the Blue Jackets. And I'm sure, if Voracek plays, he wants to prove a point that he's still got stuff to prove. Then they made a mistake trading. The Flyers made a mistake trading him. So whether Voracek plays or not remains to be seen. But yeah, it'll be fascinating, especially when Atkinson gets back to Nationwide Arena.
Yeah, and Atkinson's been hot too. He's had points in the last six of his last 8 games, and he's playing over 20 minutes a night for the Flyers most nights. So he's really become a big part of that team.
He really has. It's been a great trade for both teams so far, and obviously a few more years got to work itself out to see what the full value of that trade is going to be. So with that said, just got one more question here for you, and something that I didn't expect to see from the likes of Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. But they talked on the Jeff Merrick show on Wednesday about Jakob Chychrun, and you knew that there's rumors out there that the Arizona Coyotes were going to be moving him or were looking to move him. And there's a lot of teams that would have obvious interest, but they went as far as saying that Columbus is in and around Jakob Chychrun. And it just kind of makes you wonder, how much stock do we put into something like that? And then does it even make sense for the Blue Jackets to be involved with this?
It is definitely a bit of a shocker of a headliner to see that. When you think about a big trade like that, a big piece like Jakob Chychrun, you got to think about what the return is. And everything that I can think of that would be a part of that deal is something that I would assume would be considered close to untouchable for the Blue Jackets. They've got a lot of core defensemen already. That it's already looking pretty log jammed on the back end there already. So I don't know if I put a lot of stock into this. There was a lot of smoke around Oliver Ekman-Larsson for years. He was going to get traded out of Arizona. It is a different regime. Don't get me wrong, but I don't really know if Chychrun's even going to be on the move or if they're just really feeling pretty heavy. What do you think?
Yeah, there should be 31 teams in on Jakob Chychrun if he's available. He is that good. I think there's a perception because of the team that he's on this year. Some of his numbers are awful. He's been in and out of the lineup. I believe he's coming back here pretty soon from my understanding. But for as good as he is, 31 teams should be after him. So in one sense for the Blue Jackets, it makes sense to at least, be interested, because if you acquire somebody like him, that's an obvious upgrade. Right, compared to who's on the team right now. And I understand that, there could be some core pieces here. They're young and stuff like that. But Jakob Chychrun can eat up a ton of minutes and would be, you're looking for a shutdown defender. And, Werenski is a little bit more of an offensive defenseman. Gavrikov is a shutdown defender, at least the best one that they have on the team right now. In that sense, Chychrun would be the best shutdown defender if they are able to get him. And more importantly, he's under contract at a reasonable rate for 3 more seasons. So if you're able to pull that off, then obviously you express interest. It's just, what would you have to give up? And the thing to think about is they have the 2 first-round picks in the 22 draft. Like, would they be willing to part with maybe Chicago's first-round pick and then package a prospect or a player to get him? I'm not sure. You don't want to give up a guy like Kent Johnson. You don't want to give up a guy like Cole Cylinder to make something like that happen. Those are 2 foundational pieces to your team moving forward. You're not looking to give them up. But if you're able to maybe give up a first-round pick and maybe a prospect under that, that's a conversation worth having, because you look up and down the depth chart on the Blue Jackets in terms of their blue line. I understand Boquist, I understand Bean are up on the Blue Jackets, but with the Monsters or anywhere in the organization, Svozel's somebody's going to get some attention. Coleman's is going to get some attention. Kanasco's going to get some attention. But is there that really, really blue chip guy that's going to come in and just dominate? I am not 100% sure. And so that's why I think you have to look at Chychrun if you have the opportunity. But you're right. There's a lot of smoke, a lot of teams interested that could drive the price way up and out of the Blue Jackets range. You're not going to wreck a plan in order to get one player. But if it makes sense, they have to be all over it. Agree?
Yeah, well, I mean, somebody who I look at as a reason why you don't do this is when the Leafs went out like a decade ago now and traded for Phil Kessel, and who were the pieces that they gave up? It turned into Tyler Seguin, Dougie Hamilton, and a bunch of other things for Phil Kessel. And they made the playoffs once, I think, with Phil Kessel. So you don't want to derail everything that you're building towards just for one guy who could be a big piece of your team.
Yeah, absolutely right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Stay tuned on this one. Obviously developing, but when you hear American Friedman say Columbus is possibly in on it, you got to put a little bit of stock into it. I mean, they're doing due diligence at a minimum. You want them to do that, but if it gets out of range, keep your expectations in check on this one. So let's put an end to this show. I've got lightning round for you. Just 3 questions this week, and I'll play along with you. We'll see who does better with this. So,
and please play along at home. Yell
absolutely.
At your headphones or whatever.
Yell.
Let us know what you think. Feel free to tweet us too.
Tweet us too. And in fact, we'll even give you a shout out if you beat us. And in fact, I expect many of you to beat us. I mean, we didn't think that there would be any wins last week with Carolina and Florida, and they went 6-0. So it just shows how dumb we truly are sometimes. But with that in mind, Nick, the next 7 games. So let me read the next 7 games to you.
All right.
We're talking at Philadelphia, home to Pittsburgh, home to Ottawa, home to Calgary, home to the Rangers, at Montreal, and home to Florida. How many of those 7 games do you think that they win?
Hey, caramba. That is a thick list here. I'm going to guess they get, I'm going to say 3. Yeah, I'm going to say, I'm thinking against Pittsburgh, maybe they have a chance. Ottawa, maybe, and Montreal, I hope, is a given.
I say 4. And if I were to guess which ones that they were here, Philadelphia is really struggling. They've lost 9 in a row going into Thursday night. I have a feeling that they might be able to steal that one. Pittsburgh always plays the Blue Jackets tough. If it's at least it's at Nationwide Arena where they've had a little more success. They should be able to beat Ottawa. I think they can win one of Calgary and the Rangers, and I think they can beat Montreal. But who the heck even knows, right?
We'll see. Yeah, it's a crapshoot right now.
Yep. So 2 more questions for you. I know I talked to Taylor earlier about the Penguins here, and we talked about their window. How many more legitimate seasons do the Penguins have in their current Stanley Cup window?
I thought this year was going to be the end of that. But they're They still got those two guys. You know, if you got Crosby, Malkin, and it's going to depend on if Letang sticks around.
Yep.
I'm going to say next year's their last year. I'm cutting it there.
You're cutting it there. So this year, next year, and I'll say one more. Because still can't rule them out. And Taylor said it best. They're now starting to get really healthy, and they haven't been this healthy all season. So they won 10 games in a row prior to that. So that's the makings of being a really, really tough ask. So give me 3 years on the Penguins. I know Blue Jackets fans hate to hear that, but that's the power of having two superstars right down the core of your forward group. That's what'll happen. So speaking of the Blue Jackets, the last question for now is, how many seasons from now? So let's assume that these Blue Jackets do not make the playoffs. How many seasons until the Blue Jackets return to the Stanley Cup playoffs?
That's the thing. This year they could have been a squeaker team. They really could have been a squeaker team. There's always one or two teams that slip in there that's like, oh, we weren't expecting that. I'm going to say they'll give it not next season, but the one after.
I agree with you on that one. I think next year will be very tough, but then you start to get, with Marchenko and Johnson, and Elvis will be a little more established, being a clear number one goaltender, we think. Werenski will be more established as a number one. The young guys will have more experience. Add the draft picks that they could potentially get in the offseason and maybe a shrewd trade or two. I agree with you. I think that not next year, but the year after. So that would be 23-24 would be one where I'd say they might be able to push in for a wild card spot. But fans, let us know. Do you agree with us? Do you think we're crazy? Give us a shout out, chime in, tell us what you think about that. So Nick, in case we didn't convince you earlier with our plugs with the morning skate, if you sign up for the morning skate newsletter, you'll get to relive some of Wes McCauley's most legendary moments as an NHL referee. Boy, doesn't that just sound wonderful?
I think so. I mean, that's a legendary ref. Isn't it?
It's the kind of content that puts a smile on your face. So make sure you join the fun at morningskate.io. And I tell you what, there's no better way to start your morning. So make sure that you do that. Be full of all kinds of good stuff. Been a wonderful show. Thanks to Taylor for joining us. Nick, great job here. Fans, thank you very much for joining us on Union Junction. We're not going to have a show next week because they play against the Calgary Flames. We'll be back in the month of February, and we got some pretty special guests lined up for you. So we'll announce that as we get closer. But until then, enjoy the games. Have a great week. Stay safe. We'll see you next time on Union Junction.